Hi, everybody. This is Lauren Zurchin for Lytherus.com. I am here today interviewing Rachel Hartman, the author of Seraphina and Shadow Scale. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, it is wonderful to be here.
It's so good to be talking to you again. So, for those of you who don't know, I actually had the pleasure of interviewing Rachel in 2012, I think, for Comic-Con, and I interviewed both her and Christopher Paolini together about dragons. It was really fun. I'm actually going to post the link, hopefully, in this article in this here too. You can watch it too. But okay, so we wanted to kind of talk about your second book, your long-awaited book here that hit the shelves and has kind of been, you were saying like people have really strong opinions about it. So for those who maybe are just watching because they think it sounds fun, what can you give us like a little rundown of the general idea of the series, or even the second book if you want?
Sure. Seraphina and Shadow Scale take place in a world where dragons can take human form. And the result has been that humans aren't sure if they can trust these dragons. There's a lot of mutual suspicion, and they've had 40 years of peace, but it's very tentative. And into this world comes Seraphina, who is half dragon, half human, which is something that is just abhorred by both sides. And so she, in the first book, is having to hide what she is, but at the same time, she is in a unique position to be able to solve a murder that people think may have been occasioned by a dragon. And so how does she balance her own safety with doing what's right? And so that's the first book. The second book, she learns that there, in fact, are other people like her. The dragons have gone to war. There's this dragon civil war has begun. And in order to save her country, she figures out that she has to find the others of her kind. However, little does she know, one of the other half dragons is also seeking out the half dragons for her own purposes. And so Seraphina has to contend with that, has to begin to question, I guess, her whole purpose for doing what she's doing. And so that's sort of the conflict, and her antagonist there is somebody that is just terrifying.
And I want to get into that a little more later. Oh my gosh, she was poor messed up thing, man. That very good villain.
Well, thank you. That was fun to write. I had never really done a villain before, and so that's yeah. And so I sort of the struggle for Seraphina that is internal in the first book becomes external in the second book, and so it was an interesting way to play with the idea sort of by turning it inside out for me. So that,
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's great because, the issue, like you said, it becomes public, but that still doesn't mean it's not a prejudice. It's not a frowned upon thing. It's not something that she still has to struggle with. As we see as she's journeying, she's keeping her identity secret from some and not others. In some places it's okay, in some places it's not. And it's just it's interesting to kind of see how that evolves. And actually we had a question from a viewer, a fan, wanted to know kind of the same idea, but they say they see a lot of parallels between this situation with Seraphina and just general things like racism and homophobia. And when you set out to write it, did you intentionally plan those parallels, or did that sort of just happen in the process?
Well, it mostly happened in the process, although, those are things that I think about in real life all the time anyway. And so I mean, everything we're preoccupied with is going to trickle in a bit. But I think one of the beautiful things about fantasy is that you can sort of mythologize your own experience. Mm-hmm. And the thing that's true is the emotion behind it, right? And so you convey that as truthfully as you can, and then other people can come to it and see themselves there, or they recognize that feeling, right? And so then they see the parallels and they make the parallels themselves. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. There's a temptation, I think, to read these works sometimes as being like a one-to-one correspondence, like Oracle, that this equals this, and the Ityasari are mixed race, and and try and make a one-to-one correspondence, but that doesn't work. I think it's an unsatisfying way to look at it, because that's not the way I constructed it. So
it almost seems to me, even as I asked the question, this popped in my head, it's almost just the general a more umbrella idea of prejudice as opposed to a specific kind
Right.
of exclusion.
Right. Right. Well, but also what I wanted to create with Serafina, I think, was I wanted to talk about my own feeling as a teenager. And I think it's a feeling a lot of teenagers have, that you yourself are some kind of freak of nature, right? And that you are neither fish nor fowl. And if other people knew that you would be excluded and shunned forever and hated, and so you got to, you know, keep it really tight under wraps how weird you really are. And
Yes.
so you kind of make that literal, and that she really is weird, and she's got this physical manifestation like with scales, and so that really for me was the origin of that, so that the sort of teenage shame at self. And so, but I think that's, you know, people experience that for so many different reasons, and so, you know, people can find themselves in it then.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I think, like you're saying, it's because of the fantasy element. Like, clearly I'm not growing scales, but I think most people have been picked on, and most people have had those experiences, so that, like you said, they can relate while still being removed and yet still get something out of it. I think that was really well done. Kind of jumping onto what you just said,
Okay.
kind of a broad question, and I'm sure you've answered this before, but one of the people asked this too, and they were like, why dragons? But I mean, I know out of all the fantasy things, there's a million things you could do, but I do like that the dragon aspect is what became the freak of nature part. So I liked how you kind of blended those two together. So, I mean, did you kind of set out saying, oh man, I love dragons, I want to write a book about that? Or was it more just like, I need to deal with this issue, and this is what I want to talk about, and it kind of evolved into that?
Well, it's funny. It was sort of serendipitous. I, in my 20s, used to draw and illustrate a comic book called Amy Unbounded, which was set in the same world. And I discovered, as I was drawing this comic, I intended for there to be dragons in it because those are my favorite fantasy characters. So, but that I really sort of suck at drawing dragons. And so I was like, oh, I can't give up the dragons. You know, I have all these ideas. And then it hit me, if dragons could take human form,
You can still have your dragons.
draw humans, right? And then I'd be all set, everything would be solved. And so this accidentally opened like this treasure chest of ideas, because dragons in human form is extremely challenging, right?
Yeah, and it's really, oh my gosh, that's one of the things that's wonderful about it, is you're like, because it's funny, I would think like if I wanted dragons in my comic or my book, by putting them in human form, you're losing the flight, you're losing the scales, you're losing the fire, which are part of what make dragons dragons, which is what makes them cool, I think, you know? So you kind of put yourself in an interesting position by doing that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And well, but also because then, you know, they have to try and sort that out themselves. Like, it's going to be an internal conflict for a dragon. You know, having this human body, you're used to being able to fly or breathe fire or spot a mouse across a field moving, you know, because you got really keen eyesight, or you got really keen sense of smell. I decided they would have in dragon form. And so how frustrating would it be to be in human form? Like, are you going to sniff your neighbor just because, you know, that's how you're used to interacting with people? And
well,
so they have to
Promenade probably would. He probably would be doing weird stuff like that. The dragon leader, I was rereading the book again, and made me laugh. He like kissed her cheeks and grabbed her ears. I'm like, what? Like, I don't know why he's doing that. He's grabbing her ears always because he's trying. But I could totally be him, like, you know.
Right. But yeah, it's not going to come naturally, you know. And so that it just presents you with all these really weird angles on it that you never thought of. And so there are more dragons in dragon form in the second book, which was also kind of fun to try and figure out what that was going to be like. For Serafina to see, like, it's like going to a family reunion. Here's your dragon side of the family, and they're all, you know,
the freak side of the family that nobody talks about. Oh man. Meanwhile, she is, because her dragon mother was like, you know, oh no, she married the human, you know. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Okay, so I actually kind of want to stay on this general idea of development, I guess, and you know, so you say essentially it sounds like because of the comic you came up with the idea of the dragons in human form, and then I'm assuming the Ityosari, which are, for those of you who are sure, those are the half dragons. That's the name for them in the book, is Ityosari. Right. They kind of evolved out. I guess, you know, this is we want to kind of figure out your process of developing all this? Because
well,
for those who've read the book, real quick.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, I was just going to say, for those who have read the book or haven't, it's very obvious that these were plotted, because there are clues at the beginning of book 1 that are relevant and towards the end of book 2. So it's like you didn't just say, "Oh, what happened?" What?
You put those in. Thank you for noticing that. You put those in, and then like sometimes people
gosh.
like, where did that come from?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I mean, yeah, it was a question from from somebody was like, did you plot, or did you kind of see where the characters go? And I was like, oh, even if she did see where the characters go, she had to, like, Janula was there from the beginning. Pandowdy was there from the beginning. Like they're like, you know, back there, but they're still there, you know. And
right, yeah. Well, okay. Once I have this world then developed in the comic where dragons can take human form, when I first started to write Seraphina, actually my very first inkling of an idea was this question that kept coming to me, which is, what if you married someone who had a terrible secret and you didn't know what it was until they were dead, right? Well, that's Seraphina's father's story. And the question was coming to me, you know, I hadn't really thought about half dragons up until that point, but then I thought, well, that could be the secret. I already have this world, and that would be a wonderful secret. And so then what's going to happen? And early drafts of Seraphina, in fact, were much more kind of quiet, and were about her and her father at home, tension, you know, not getting along, and, you know, all the baggage, and how do you love the child when, you know, the mother lied to you, but you love her, but she's not there, and all this stuff. Well, it made a very quiet story. And I don't remember where this analogy came from, if I made it up or if my editor made it up, but the analogy that got used was, it was like I was tending a begonia, and it was maybe the most beautiful, fantabulous begonia in the world, and begonia fanciers everywhere would love it. But it was in the middle of this huge garden that I had also created, and I was just totally ignoring all that. And so the idea in revisions was we had to take this plant or the world I'd created and make it worthy of the world, I guess, spread the story out into the world. So, you know, she had to leave home, and she had to you know, what are going to be the consequences of that? What are the things she has to think about? What are the dangers to her? And so, yeah, it took, I mean, Seraphina went through 4 iterations with completely different plots. It's like the same characters, but different plots.
Really? Wow, that's crazy. Like, not just slight adjustments. You're saying like completely
different plots. By the last time, it was sort of great. I felt like I was a movie director who had been privileged to work with the same actors over and over, and just knew everybody's capabilities. Like, you do this and this, and everybody's like, yay! And the cast parties were awesome, and, you know, that sort of thing. So, but so in asking whether I was a plotter, I was not at first, right? I mean, those early drafts were really pantsing it, and there was not much plot. So I'm a reluctant plotter, I guess, if we're talking about that sort of thing. I have learned that you need to, otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the big secrets and the big clues and the big awesome parts in the second book were because of things that you're in the first book. You're like, what, like the saint stuff, all the stuff with the saints, like,
yeah,
blew my mind.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So guys, I mean, clearly this is not a spoiler-free interview, because I want to be able to talk all the meat with Rachel here today. But if you haven't read the second book and you love Seraphina, you've got to check it out, because it's really fascinating how she pulls things that you are already familiar with, how she takes the characters we know and evolves them.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's really cool. So you're not a reluctant plotter.
I'm a reluctant plotter, or a reformed pantser, or the other thing I've learned, though, and this is the other side of it in a way, is that if I plot in too much detail, then I have a tendency to just sort of phone it in. Like, I'll be writing, I'll be like, oh, what happens next? Look at the outline. Okay, and the characters walk over and do the next thing, and that it's kind of lifeless that way. So I've learned, I guess, that I have to write I have to outline, but I have to be a loose enough outline that I could still go zoop, you know, and take the end run and zip around and do something else if it occurs to me as I'm writing. And that is often when the really, really good ideas occur to me, is right when I'm in the middle of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting you say that, because I think that one of the best things about these two books is the depth and complexity in the world. Like, it feels balanced, but we've got, you know, all of the music stuff, we've got the religious stuff, we've got the internal struggle, we've got the dragon war, we've got the Ichusari. Like, there's all these layers, and as a reader, they made the world so rich. Like, I loved, you know, like, I reread Serafina before I read Shadowscale, and it was just wonderful to like dig back in and be like, oh my gosh, I forgot how much wonderful stuff is in this book, you know? It's really neat. I mean, so for those who aren't familiar with Rachel, she has a music thing. How would you like to explain your music thing to people here? I don't know how. I was kind of trying to be broad term. You're very.
Well, I played cello growing up, and you know, my sisters both played string instruments too. So we had a little string trio at home, and we would also sing together. And so I was actually from a very musical household, but I didn't really understand that at the time. I thought everybody did this all the time. I don't know. So for me, music has always sort of been a verb as much as anything else. It's like it's something you do, right? And so, but then once I left college, I actually kind of didn't do it for many years, and I missed it though, and I wanted to talk about it. Especially one of my goals in Serafina was I wanted to talk about what it feels like to stand up in front of an audience and perform. That this it's terrifying and exhilarating, and it's this weird connection, like you feel like you have touched everyone in the room in some way, and so that's one of the things that I was really anxious to convey, and that's one of the reasons I made her a musician, is I wanted that feeling to come through. But music also, I mean, it's funny, music then in the second book, there's not as much music that she plays. I mean, she's out traveling. I really stuck in as much as I absolutely could, but you know, she's traveling, and so it's harder. But with the second book, actually, it was music. I started doing music again, if that makes any sense. During the second book, I've joined 2 choirs now, and
you didn't need to manifest it out into the story as much?
Well, no, I think what it was more that music is in the story, in the sense that I went through some really hard times writing this book, and music sort of saved me, as it were, and brought me back. I was having the pressure of a second book is really different than what you experience in the first. Like with the first, if the first flops, nobody cares, right? Nobody cares except you. But the second flops, there's thousands of people who are going to be sad, and so the pressure was such that I was not enjoying writing. I couldn't. I mean, I went through a period where I could not write at all, and music was sort of an auxiliary art form for me. It was something I could do that had no ego wrapped up in it, that I could just do for fun, and it sort of became my therapy art in the way writing used to be, and it brought me back. It reminded me what it was supposed to feel like to write, and what I wanted it to feel like to write, and so I would try and consciously recover that feeling as I was writing, if that makes any sense.
No, that totally does. I absolutely know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to hear how, you know, the art kind of saved you in a way. You're saying, like, it helped you open back up to your creativity in the way that you needed to get this story finished.
I really feel like it did. But it was writing Serafina and writing about music so much there that got me singing again in the first place, you know, and so it kind of did this big circle, if that makes any sense. I wrote about music, which made me do music, which let me write, and so.
No, and I mean, it's. I think that's really cool for you know, struggling writers out there who are maybe feeling disheartened or stuck, and I'm a huge proponent of this too. Like you have to find other ways to fill your creative well up. You can't expect it to be. Right. You know, because when you're making, you're putting out, you have to fill it back up, you know, and it has to be, like you said, ego free, just something you love, something that makes you happy. And so that's really cool, because it's such a important part of the character, I think, and her development as a person. I don't know. I just loved I follow Rachel on Twitter, and she always is posting like interesting links to her in her blog where you talk about like crazy, like Baroque music things and like obscure like Swedish. I mean, like you do like crazy references, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I went to college for music as well, but I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about right now. I'm totally serious right now. I'm
so pleased like that, because I never know. I'm always like, oh, Jim being all esoteric again. Everybody's going to be like, oh, there she goes again.
I mean, I enjoy it, but I'm like, dang, I don't. It's awesome, but I'm like, I feel like I'm like inadequate here as a musician. I'm like, I don't know what she's talking about. So it's kind of cool to see the stuff that you come up with. Like, it's pretty cool. So you should follow her on Twitter. It's at and then _ Rachel Hartman. I'll put the link. It's very cool, but that's really great.
Underscore, because there are other Rachel Hartmans. It's a fairly common name, it turns out. I never appreciated
your picture is you holding this giant like antler head thing.
Yes, I was in Alaska.
Pretty awesome. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out like where we should go with this, because there's a lot of interesting things.
We've just gone all over the place.
Well, no, yes. I'm like, it's fantastic, and I mean, I have my notes here. I'm looking at them, but we're kind of touching on all these amazing points, because it's not just a linear story. It's all of these parts that make it wonderful. And I kind of want to delve into the Itiusari a little bit. In Shadow Scale, I would say like the first half of the book is really the journey to find the others. And, there's a lot of other stuff happening in the world around. And why did you make that the most prevalent part? Is it because of Serafina's personal journey, or
Yeah. Part of it is that, one of the things I wanted to achieve in Shadow Scale is I wanted it to be a hero's journey. These are things that we don't think of as a feminine thing. Like, I had always read like Joseph Campbell and The Hero with a Thousand Faces and the Monomyth, and I was like, that is such a doodly thing for dudes being dudes.
Really is. Thing, like,
and Odysseus and Frodo and Luke Skywalker, all the dudes. And so this has nothing to do with women. This is not a female story. Well, I have a friend who's a doula. I don't know if you're familiar with that term. That is someone who helps women in childbirth. Not a midwife. She's not the medical professional, but she's there as a support person, helping them through it. And she also teaches childbirth classes. And one of the things she was talking about, she had just started teaching these childbirth classes, is that she talks about giving birth as a hero's journey. And I was like, what? No. The doodliest story of all is the story of giving birth? No.
In every way.
Like, think about it. Think about it. You are called to adventure, right? You're pregnant. There's no going back. The call. And then you descend through the underworld, like the part where you wish you were dead,
Oh,
and
my
you receive
God.
unexpected places. But in the end, it has to be you for the final, push. And you come back with this light for the world, and you are changed, and the world is changed. And I was like, totally.
Wow.
It blew my tiny mind.
Wow, yeah. I've never really thought about that.
Yeah, that this story could describe what is the most quintessentially female activity, because that's the whole distinction, right? And so, and I've had a baby. I remember it, and so I was like, okay, let's do this. And so Serafina, doing this journey, she has to make an inner journey at the same time, and she has to get to the underworld, right? The very dark place. And then she has to make that one final push to bring herself out of herself, as it were. And it transforms her, it transforms the world. And so that was one of the things I was going for. The Itiusari, I tell you what, if I could do one thing over, though, in this entire series, I would not have 17 of them. I don't know what I was thinking. That was so many. That was a very large struggle. I talk about everything as if this was the big struggle writing shadow scale, but no, there were lots of really big struggles. And one of them was these people had to be people, right? They had to be different from each other. They had to have their own motivations. They had to, and so you really have to call on kind of your inner Charles Dickens. I don't know if you're a fan of Dickens. I used to love Dickens when I was a teenager. People sometimes disparage it as caricaturing, but he had a talent for being able to sum up a character really quickly, just in a few sentences. He would have these huge books with so many characters, but you just like within a few sentences, you could tell exactly who that person was. And so that's a real skill. That's a gift. And I don't know that I have it exactly, but I kind of try and channel that.
Yeah, and you're right. Now that I'm thinking about it, because I can think of like, okay, so like Dame Ochre was grumpy. She had the tail. She, had her gut guided her. Like you have like, I mean, there's a million of them. Like Nedward. I mean, he's the doctor. The pig doctor is a kleptomaniac, which is hilarious. Like, oh my gosh, yeah. And you're right. Like each of them have
funny, make them all distinct. Actually, one of the biggest compliments my editor paid me in the entire writing of this, it was in one of the very later drafts, and there's a place in there where she's just got all their names listed in a row, all their names. And he wrote, "It is a credit to how hard you've worked that I know who each and every one of these people is."
Yes, like, I actually thought the same thing. I think it was like towards the end when they're doing the net up at the roots, the fire. And literally it's like, here's everybody. And I was like, oh my God, and I actually counted. I'm like, okay, so who's missing? Because there's 18 of them. So Seraphina's not there. And, the priest isn't there and Abdo isn't there. Who else is there? Like, I knew who the characters were. Totally agree, 100%. Yeah.
So yeah, no, that was hard to do.
But it worked. It really did because, I feel like, I don't know, like even though that was Seraphina's journey, knowing what she went through and having heard repeatedly from the others that they felt like they were the only ones and they thought they were alone and they're not alone in this world. And you're wondering, it almost makes me like, what are their lives going to be like? What is their story, their journey? And, like. Well,
I felt like we really had to know them in order for what Janula was doing to be horrible, right? Mm-hmm. That if we didn't care about them, then we didn't, then it was more theoretically horrible and less personally horrible.
Yeah, no, I get you. And you had to be emotionally invested in them as people. Yeah, totally.
Right. But yeah, there were too many. I mean, we could have cut the number in half. But oh well. What's done.
Do you have a particular favorite?
God.
I mean, I guess Seraphina technically is one, so I would assume she's one of your favorites because she's like the lead character.
Yeah. Kamba really, really kind of sunk herself into my heart, and Nedward, for whatever reason, I'm peculiarly attached to him, and even Inger, it's funny, I really started out hating Inger a lot, and I don't know, he grew on me too. They all grew on me. What can I say?
Why did you do that to Nedward? Why?
Oh, I'm really sorry. And now I'm writing this next book, and actually I could use him in the next book, but he's gone, so boo.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It had to happen to somebody.
I know. It just made me sad that it was
somebody
him.
that we kind of loved, who was a gentle soul. And
yeah, he really was a gentle soul.
He was.
Abdo is my favorite. I love him so much. It like hurts me how much I love that character. He is delightful. And for those of you who are listening or watching here, I actually did the audio first. I read Seraphina, and then I had an arc of Shadow Scale, and I was kind of reading it and all this stuff. But then when I knew that this was happening, I wanted to, I was like, well, let me do the audio and see what that was like. And but she nails the voices, and Abdo's voice is just so like alive and beautiful. I don't know, like he's my favorite. Yeah,
I'll have to listen. I haven't listened to that to Shadow Scale actually, so I'll have to listen. She liked her in Seraphina. I thought she did a great job. So
yeah, I just really like how she captures. I mean, poor Abdo has a rough go of it in the second book.
He is one of my favorites too. I was sort of naming the new ones, but he is one of my favorites as well, and always has been, and that's why he got that much of a story. And that was a struggle too, because Abdo, we have this I don't know, I read TV tropes too much maybe, but there was all this temptation to have bad things happen to him because he's so cute, and he'd be like a little whoopee, and he kept punching me. Like I would have bad things happen. He's like, I'm fighting back. Hello. Like, oh, sorry. Yes, you are.
That's Abdo though. Like he, you know, I mean, oh yeah. It's an amazing journey you take him on as a character too. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, we're sitting here, we've talked for like half an hour just like digging into these characters, but it's just, I love them. It just makes this book so wonderful, is these characters are just so awesome and unique and relatable, even though they're half dragon people and he has a mouthful of scales, you know, like it's
right.
Okay, so I want to actually jump into Janula here. She is the villain. She is the big baddie of I mean, she's even got her tentacles into the first book of slightly, but like really the second book is where we learn her story. And she is one of the most broken characters I've read in a really long time. Like it was kind of sad at the end. I actually felt really sad for her, you know? So talk to us about her as a character, like when you thought of a villain, how you wanted to develop her and where she kind of evolved from, because she's wonderful.
Well, yeah, no, she has been sort of percolating in my brain for a very long time, and I had an idea what I wanted her to be. My favorite kinds of villains are the ones who are well-intentioned, in fact, but just completely wrong about how to go about it, right? And so she has in fact a good intention. She wants them to be safe. She wants them to be together, right? And that's her main thing. And everything else can burn. That's fine. But her people will be safe, and no one will suffer what she has suffered. But she's so ham-fisted going about it. She was way harder than I thought. Like back when I was writing Seraphine, I thought she would be pretty easy and straightforward to write, but it's harder. Mind control is a really difficult power to manipulate because it becomes too powerful way too quickly, right? So you have to have really clear limits on who she can control, who she can't control, how she can control them, the degree to which, where she can be at any one time. So I had to really rein her in as best I could. But also, it's a scary power just in and of itself.
Oh, so it really was. And that was like, when you say you took Seraphina to the dark place, like about 2/3 of the way through the book, I was like, oh my God, how is this going to resolve itself? Because like, it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And like, like Janula would just, it was kind of scary because, you know, there was one part in particular that I remember having a very visceral reaction is when Inger told her that Janula had Lars. So her friend back at the castle was basically had become possessed by Janula, and just like losing that, you know, like having to deal with that. It was just, and then like when she tricked the Pende and Abdo and got hooks in him too, like it was just like, oh my God, like she's just crazy. Like unbelievable as a I mean, very good villain. Yeah, I can see as a writer how you would want to still have limits on that. Obviously, you can't just be like, I'm going to dominate all the minds forever, because there's your story.
Well,
you know?
Right. Or can she be inside multiple people at once? I decided she couldn't. Like her consciousness can only be one place at a time, really. And so, you know, otherwise she's too. I mean, she almost was too powerful, anyway.
Really was.
So yeah, it was hard to find the balance. But the other thing is, when you've got mind control, because it's such a horrifying power to begin with, like nobody wants their mind control. That's like everybody's sort of worst nightmare, right? Is somebody else using you like a puppet, or maybe it's just mine. I don't know. I think everybody finds that kind of gross. So trying to make it so that power itself is not doing all the heavy lifting. That in fact, Janula's personality has to be bigger than that, if that makes any sense. And so that it's not the fact of mind control, it's the person and why they're doing it and what they think they're doing. That is important. And so that was a tricky balance to achieve too. She was hard to write. I mean, I don't even remember, I lost count how many drafts of this thing we did. But it got to the point where I would just read my editor's comments, and you know, she was always either too subtle or too kind of mustache twirly, right? And so I'd be reading along his comments and be like, okay, no, working. No. And then suddenly he'd be like, ooh. And I say, okay, that right there. That's what we need.
More of that. Yeah.
Just finding the way to do it, the way to make her.
Yeah, I actually, I won't lie. I was pretty tired. I don't want to say tired as a reader, but I was like emotionally drained when, like, right before the climax, where she basically tortures Seraphina and is like, you took everything away from me, so I'm going to take everything you love and I'm going to destroy it, and I'm going to take that away from you. And I mean, and you know, you hear villains say that all the time, but like the way you did it in the story, like, you know, again, for those who may not be familiar, you know, her uncle Orma is on the run for the end of the first book, because the censors want to censor his brain and they want to clear him out, and they get him, and it's heart-wrenching. Oh my God. I got upset. I was upset by that. I really was.
It was upsetting. I don't blame you. Yeah. But I think for me that the crucial chapter is the flashback chapter, where you can understand, you know, you really get an intimate view of her and Seraphina and what they went through together, and how she needed an escape, right? She was being tortured. She needed this place that was Seraphina, but then she was taking over, and so the complicated basis for that relationship was tough. I don't know, because I've been trying to avoid the reviews. But I suspect that it has occasionally been baffling or upsetting to people that she doesn't die. I don't know if that's true. Have you?
I don't know. I haven't really read the reviews. I just know my own opinion. I actually thought the ending was great, because even throughout the book, even in the midst of all the crap, Seraphina still gets bouts of mercy for her. You know, like, please don't hurt her anymore. Please don't take her.
That was really important to me, that she not die, I guess is what I'm really trying to say. I hope no one's actually been upset. But, you know, my husband will read the reviews and then sort of summarize them, and so there's little inklings of, I
mean, she's a bad guy. I'm sure most people don't want them, like, dominating, but I don't know. I felt that was handled well, because she's out of the picture, but she's may get a chance to heal, you know.
Well, I hope so. I'll be interested to see, you know.
Me too.
I'm not one of those authors who knows everything that happens after the book ends. So.
Great. All right. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, and then the other thing that happens during that kind of low moment is, besides the Orma thing, which you do redeem it at the end when he starts to want to learn who he was. And so, I mean, at least you can breathe a little lighter there, you know. But when she basically reveals the love triangle to everybody, or the love, I guess technically is a triangle, or Seraphina's.
Yeah, it's a triangle.
Yeah, it's a triangle. Like, but you don't really know about the third end of it until, like, the end of the book. You know, I won't lie, I did not see that coming. I really did not. So,
that is planted in the first book as well. There are seeds of princess.
Well, looking back, yeah, I mean, I read it twice. I read Shadow Scale pretty much. I listened to it and then I read it. And knowing what I know, when I went back and read it, like, even from the beginning, you know, Glisselda would blush of the beginning, and I was just thinking she was getting angry, or she, you know, but I didn't notice it really. But then I was like, oh, okay, she's blushing, you know. Yeah, I don't know, but I guess in the first book it didn't even cross my mind, because Seraphina was so fixated on Kiggs, and Glisselda's she's acting like a good friend. I mean, this is how a friend who loves a friend would act anyways, you know.
That's true. That is also true.
You know, it's not like I got this, like, strong, you know, sexual vibe from Glisselda with Seraphina. It was more just love, and, you know, like this. Yeah, I don't know. It was really interesting, and I really liked how you decided to drop that bomb, because it was obviously an issue that had been hanging over their heads since it had happened.
Right.
And so I wanted to actually talk about this. I saw this in a review, or so I, as a reader, I'm reading this book and I'm like, oh, okay, so Zelda kissed Seraphina, so she's into her, okay, but Seraphina's obviously in love with Kiggs and he loves her. But then but then you have Serafina kind of going, and I'm feeling things that I'm not even going to think about. And then at the end of the book, you're like, it's the three of us, and it's our business and nobody else's business. And I mean, did you create, like, basically, is it like a polyamorous relationship? Is like, are they the three of them essentially together?
I don't think it is at the moment that they get married. I think it's what I wanted to do was to convey that three grown people can talk among themselves and negotiate among themselves and come to an answer, you know? And so I think it's open that it could end up going that way. I think it sort of depends how things pan out. There's going to be, you know, and I just like kind of leaving the possibility there. I think if I write future books, as I write future books, because I am already writing a future book, I'm going to have to come down one way or the other and say, yes, here's how they solved this. And
yeah,
so,
but it doesn't even have to be, I mean, it could, but it couldn't. I don't know, because the way you left it, you very clearly stated, Tiggs and Griselda get married because who else could she marry that she could have a really strong friendship relationship and rule the kingdom with? So you were like, they are not sleeping together. They do not love each other like that. Right. This is what this is. There's like brother and sister. Like, that is how this is. Then everything else is ambiguous. I'm like, well, not really, because Tiggs and Serafina love each other. But then Griselda's sort of over here like, I love you too. Like, I don't know. It just it made me think.
It's not solved at the point of the end of the book. It's not resolved. They will resolve it, you know, and they could resolve it in a number of ways, and polyamory is on the table, right? That's out there. So, you know, I think this is my own idiosyncratic hang up to it. Not just, I don't want Janula killed, and I don't want a static happily ever after where you marry the prince and then that's it. Everything's solved. Everybody's happy forever. You know, that's not life. You know, I want there to be the seeds of more stories. I want there to be all the possibilities. Because that's exciting to me. Not solving it. Not you know, you get married and that's the end of the story. That's never the end of the story. Anybody who's been married.
That's the beginning of the time with the relationship. Like, now I'm stuck with you. What do I do now? You know, like, how does this work?
Right.
In theory, unless you're getting divorced. But in theory, yeah, it's like, oh, okay, I chose you, and now what do we do? You know?
I mean, the moment of the kiss, it's like Serafina suddenly sees a possibility that she hadn't even understood was a possibility up until that point.
And she was like, I can't even think about this right now. Like,
right, because it's like
the world is ending and I have to go save them all. Yeah. I can't deal with this right now. Yeah.
Right. But the possibility really was there. And so, you know, she's going to have to think about it now. She's going to have to figure out how this is going to work, if it's going to work, what can be done. And I wanted her to be able, if it should ever turn out this way, to walk away. She's not married to either of them, in fact. And if someday things end, she can go. You know, that is a whole other possibility. I just, yep. So I wanted, that's the kind of that's the kind of humorless person I am. No, but
that's interesting, because one of the things I love about this love story is it's a meeting of minds. They fall in love with each other's minds and their souls. It's not like he's hot and he's sexy and I want to make out with him. Like, it's like they're just connected in there, and it's all like the meat inside, and then they just happen to fall. So for me, I mean, in my broad understanding of how I feel about relationships, I feel like those are the ones that tend to be more stable, more sturdy, more long-term, you know? I mean, obviously you need to be attracted to somebody, but, you know, at the end of the day, you need to be able to talk to this person, converse with this person, you know? Like, yeah, and that's one of the things I love about her and Kiggs' relationship is it's like the whole, like, he'll say something or he'll do something and she's like, yeah, that's why I love him, because his brain is amazing, you know, like, and I'm like, that's, you know, that's amazing, because it's true and he's great, you know?
Right. Yeah, no, I have very picky, weird requirements for romance as well. So that was I wanted to write a romance that I would find moving, you know, so.
No, it was in there. It was really nicely done, because it was so much YA, even YA fantasy. It's like the love story is a major part of it, which isn't a bad thing necessarily. It's just, it was nice to have it in there, but not be like obsessing her life and taking over everything. And, like even like when they start making out, she's even the one who's like, okay, you need to relax. We need to talk about this. Like it's handled really well. I really liked how it went. Now you so you planned from the beginning that Glissado would be into Serafina, because you said there's clues kind of in book one. I mean, how did you approach going into that topic? Because it's such a hot topic these days with diverse books and people needing more diversity in relationships and characters and race and all this thing in books. Did you say like, this is who her character is? Or did you feel like, I mean, I'm always just curious because this is such a hot topic right now about how authors are approaching that, I guess.
Well, for me, particularly with like gender and sexual orientation kind of issues, that was super easy for me to put that kind of thing in there. You know,
like with Canva?
Sorry?
With like Canva, you mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, my mother is married to a woman. My sister is also gay and also married. Yay for the world today. But you know, and so all through high school, I was the quintessential fruit fly. Like all my friends were gay, although they weren't out in high school, so I didn't even know, right? But it just, for me, that has always been just the way the world is. The world is full of gay people. In fact, there was a time in college where I just decided, okay, I'm just going to assume everyone is gay unless they come out to me as straight, because everybody, all my friends, I think it was National Coming Out Day or something, but I had like 6 guys come out to me on the same weekend, and I was like, okay, you know, I'm starting to get a complex, you know, that they're all like, Rachel, I thought I liked women until I met you.
Oh, no! Terrible. Thank you.
No, but it was like all at once. I was like, okay, this is weird. But so that part, that was always really easy. And it was kind of fun putting in the hints about Griselda, because one thing that's interesting in our culture is women get away with a lot more kind of physical affection just with friends than men do. Like nobody thinks anything of it. You can totally kiss your girlfriends, and you can totally, like, you know, grab each other's butt, and nobody notices what they might notice you grab their butt. But
I'm saying, well, there's a whole weird football man slapping thing that happens.
Well,
I mean, I'm not gonna. I generally don't go up and fondle my friends.
Yeah, I remember reading an article about how lesbianism has been for generations effectively invisible because people don't believe it somehow, or
it's just like a more women are more touchy, I guess.
And so because it doesn't matter if women touch each other, there's no penis involved, so it's not sexual, right? So you know, so you know, I could have her kiss Serafina, I could have her, you know, blush, and nobody would think about it. Right?
I did not until literally she's like, you and Kiggs are idiots, and she kisses her and goes, oh, and Glissado's like, yeah, oh, hello. Like, it's like, oh, hello.
Yes.
And I was like, man. And then there's a part of me that's like, damn, Serafina must have like pheromones like crazy or something, because like everybody loves her. You know, like Jessica loves her too. Like, you know, like
with any love triangle, right? Everybody's all like, woo.
Oh my gosh. No, it's wonderful, but it's, yeah, I mean, and you're right, it was just oblivious. But again, I also think it's because Serafina's mind wasn't focused that way. And the reader being in her head, you know.
Notice, right. She was not drawing any conclusions from behavior. She was just, yeah. So, yeah. So that was fun to put in. And Kamba was a delight to write about. You know, and it was really interesting and instructive for me, because there were a lot of things, even though I have trans friends, this sounds like trans fats. I have transgendered friends. And so I felt like I was cool and I knew what was going on. But even in the course of writing, I would find myself doing things that would make me go, oh shit, that's not cool. For example, there in one of the early drafts, it somehow, like, there had to be a succession of realizations where different characters realized that Kamba was really a man. It was like, no, she's not really a man. She's not a punchline of a joke, right? She's not, you know, we don't have to flog this thing over and over again as characters in succession realize. It's like, no, it will be mentioned once, and Serafina will understand it, and then we will forget about it.
Well, and also you kind of, you're right when she says like, how do I, what gender do I reference you as? I don't remember how she said it, but like, because that language is so complicated. But I love how later on in the book we find out that the reason she was throwing herself off the cliff essentially was because of the poisoned glass, not because of her struggles with her identity. So even Serafina was like, I think I know everything and I'm totally wrong again. Like you made it like that wasn't the thing.
Having like Serafina experience this acknowledgement of her own biases, that she's like, oh, I was making assumptions again.
Yeah,
and
exactly. And of course she's more open-minded than most because of her situation. So, I mean, like, and I like how you say Canva's like, I was already felt like a freak enough because I was half dragon. I wasn't going to also say I wanted to be a woman and I didn't know what the heck. Yeah, it's a wonderful character. I really love who she is as a person and the kind of strength and beauty that she has evolved as she's come into who she is, I guess, and felt like her own. Yeah, lovely character, wonderful character. But I'm loving, it's really interesting to hear, as an author, how you approach that subject. Because again, some people, it's just an interesting topic because of what's relevant in the news. And there's a big push for more diversity in YA. I know they're also meaning that in race, but also all across the board with diversity.
Well, right. Race was another thing that was I was worried, frankly, because I'm from South originally, right? And I happen to know firsthand that I have knee-jerk racist reactions. I've seen them.
I have them too. And it's, at least you know where they are, but it's like completely irrational. You're like,
right. And so it's like you have to constantly try and police yourself. And I pray that everything, has been weeded out of this. I haven't heard anybody saying, hey, with the first book, there were reviews that said, oh, isn't it a pity that she made Abdo a dancer? That's so stereotypical. Well, because blacks as entertainers, and that this is stereotypical. And I totally
see. That didn't cross my mind at all. I mean, I guess I get that, but
that's this thing about knee-jerk racist reactions. They don't cross your mind. However, he wasn't a dancer because he was dark-skinned. He was a dancer because I had it in my mind that I really wanted to dance. I've also been a dancer. See?
Oh, he's so you got wonderful. Oh my gosh.
You got the dancer, right? And so this next character, I needed one more half-dragon character. He was one of the last ones developed for Serafina. I needed one more half-dragon character. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh he's gonna be a dancer. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, he was a dancer first, and then I was like, oh, I should have him be Porphyrian because I don't have any dark-skinned characters in my bed. But he did, and they're right. It's a stereotype, and so, and I thought about that at the time, and I could have changed him. I could have made him be something that was not quite so stereotypical, but I loved him as a dancer. He was a dancer first, and the dancer was the most important part to me.
Well, so to me, it wasn't about race. It was like he danced. She said, you even say it. He dances like she plays flute. It's how she expresses herself.
Right.
It's part of their being
through that. Right. Yeah. That was the. But again, I can totally see if people feel like I could have done better. I can always do better. We can all always do better.
No, but I mean, again, race wasn't an issue. It just was it was like you said, an afterthought. It's like, well, he's Porphyrian, and it was every once in a while you'd be like, I would color kind of escaped me for most of the characters in my mind. They were just kind of all neutral in a way because it wasn't like an issue, like, I don't know. It just became, it was really interesting how you handled them. Yeah, I thought it was really well done. So,
but there were other challenges. Like, for example, I wanted his hair to be in what's called Bantu knots, but I think Bantu is some African reference. I don't know the origin of the word, and there is no Africa per se in Fantasyland, so I couldn't. It's little cultural things like that. Like, you can't call the thing in your throat an Adam's apple if the people don't believe in biblical. I mean, there's no biblical myths, right?
Wow, yeah, deconstructing our.
Describe his hair knots without using a term that couldn't exist in this world, and then
Yeah, I mean, you just say hair knots, don't you? I think.
Right. Yeah. Right. An interesting challenge that I'm finding with this next book I'm writing, because I'm writing another book, is I will have dark-skinned characters in there, but I have dark-skinned characters who are Ninnish. They've been living in Ninnis for years. Maybe their ancestors came from Porphyry, but my temptation is to just refer to them as Porphyrian, as a shorthand for dark skin. But I'm beginning to realize, no, you can't just do that, because they're not Porphyrian, they're not culturally Porphyrian, right? And so how to, incorporate them and without, and so it's an interesting.
And you kind of deal with that, like with Brissy in the second book. Like, she's a dragon, yes, but she strongly identifies as Porphyrian. Like, that is who fun. She is.
That was, yeah, that was fun.
I mean, we actually had a question.
Giving her that identity.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, giving her that identity and having them, when they kill that dragon and then they pray to the Porphyrian gods. I was like,
I want to run working together too, which was awesome. Like they're like not even dragons. Like, they're Porphyrians who happen to turn into dragons. Is how I kind of saw them.
Right. It's wonderful.
Yeah, like literally just this meshing of. So I could see how you're saying, like, the Ninnish, Porphyrian Ninnish, they're really Ninnish, like with that Porphyrian heritage. Like, I'm part Irish, I'm part Slovak, but I don't identify as Czechoslovakia. You know what I mean? Like, I actually we had
a shorthand for you. Oh, Jesus. She's so static.
Our computer's so dumb. It's slowing down, everybody. Right. Sorry, we're catching up.
All right.
Okay, so what was I saying? Okay, so we had a question about Brissy. Are we ever going to get anything from her, more points of view, or like her, what it's like? The question here is literally exploring dragon society and the difficulty she encounters as she learns the intricate details between.
That's interesting that somebody brought that up. I would love to write a book about Brissy and her reintegration or lack thereof into dragon society. I think that's going to be a really fun way. In fact, I sort of have in my mind half a notion that I could write a book that had Brissy and Abdo slightly older than he is now, and the two of them doing stuff. I don't have any more details than that, unfortunately. That idea is very only mildly developed in the sense of, it sounds like there's potential there, and I'd love to do that.
Oh, is it going to be a romance too? Like, are they going to hook up? This is great. Maybe they will.
That would be awkward or exciting. I don't even know.
We've got like a Porphyrian dragon girl with this half dragon guy who's Porphyrian too, but they're Porphyrian, so they have that connection. Yeah, that would be.
They have that in common, right? Exactly.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, but that's not the thing I'm writing next. The thing I'm writing next.
What are you working on? So that was one of the questions too. Like, what?
I'm sure that must be one of the questions. Somebody's got to ask that.
Of course. And that was. I mean, I was under the impression that this was a duology. That was just these two books, correct?
Yes, that Seraphina's as main character is finished for now. Okay. I decided to take her up again someday, but I don't know. She'd be older, so I wouldn't be young adult maybe. The next thing I'm working on is a second duology. I don't know how I get stuck in these duologies, but it was originally going to be one book, but I sent them this outline, and they're like, there's an awful lot here. Maybe divide it in two. So yeah, so it's about one of Seraphina's half sisters, one of her human half sisters, who are mentioned just briefly in Seraphina, the twins, Tessie and Jen. It's about Tessie. The working title is Tess in Boots, but I think that's going to have to change because it makes it sound too young. And this is actually has some more adultier themes, shall we say, than what we've explored so far. But the basic inciting incident, I guess, of the story is that Seraphina saw it on her times after this revelation that his first wife was a dragon. He's had an official pardon from the queen, but that doesn't stop the Lawyers Guild from basically barring him from practicing law anymore. So they're falling on hard financial times. And so it would be really handy if one of the twins would please marry wealthy and, help save the family.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And Tessie would have been the one because she is older, but she spoils things for herself. And I won't go into too much detail about that. And so it's Jen who ends up marrying. And Tess is going to be sent off to a convent. Or maybe she could be the governess to Jen's children, except that she punches Jen's brother-in-law in the nose at the wedding night. So no, they're like, no, she can't live here.
Awesome book. I can tell. I'm like, yes, violence.
So she's gonna be sent to the convent, and but instead she ends up with a pair of boots, which were given to her by Seraphina, and the boots are themselves a suggestion, and she takes the suggestion and she goes, and so that's the beginning, and.
Very cool. Very interesting. I mean, especially because she's human. She's a human in this half-dragon world that we've been in the head of for so long, you know?
Right. One of the fun parts to me so far is that being Seraphina's sister, she has a different view on Seraphina than Seraphina herself does, right? And so that's been super fun. Like, nobody knows you better than your sister. And nobody loves you harder or is better able to identify all your faults.
And we're like, oh, my sister's like, you blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, shut up. You know, you're that way. You know, but she's totally right. Yeah, totally. Right. Oh, my gosh, that'll be really fun.
Yeah, seeing Seraphina from another angle is fun. She ends up traveling. It's sort of almost a picaresque kind of trickster travel novel. She ends up with a quiggle companion. I don't want to be too spoilery, but they go in search of the legendary world serpents, who are yet another species of dragon that the Quiggle tell stories about, but that the regular big dragons don't even believe exist. So it's yes.
Wow, this sounds awesome. Yay, I'm so excited because it's such a great world. I mean, it would be a shame not to dig into it more. And you're right, you've created these characters. I mean, legitimately, you could write a whole section of short stories from each, half dragon, because they're already developed just from who they are. Like, you've definitely invested the time in like these characters, and you're saying you're taking characters that we barely see and writing whole stories on them. So it really is going to be cool to see how you take all this. I'm stoked. This is going to be great.
Yeah.
Okay, so last couple questions here.
Okay.
I thought this was cute. If you had to parallel Kiggs and Seraphina to another couple in literature, what would it be? Which would it be?
I don't actually know.
I was thinking about that too, going, that's a hard question.
That is a really hard question. I don't feel like I've seen anybody who's quite like Kiggs and Fina. So that's one of the reasons I wrote Kiggs and Fina the way I did, because it was something I felt had been kind of, missing in my reading repertoire. But I may just
think about.
I need to read a little more widely. But no, I don't know who to compare them to. I'm really sorry.
Hey, well, it's worth asking, because I couldn't come up with anyone either. I was like, they're so different. Like, their story is so interesting and weird and unique.
Right.
And we were just curious. We had a couple people asking about like books you read recently. What's the best book you read in the last year? Have you, what's some books that you read recently that you would recommend for our readers?
I can totally tell you that, and it just came out this week. It's finally out, so I can finally recommend it to people, and they can buy it. Is Naomi Novik's Uprooted. That just came out this week, and I was privileged to read it like almost a year ago.
Wow.
I was given an advanced copy, and I blurbed it.
You blurbed it.
I love this book a lot, and it's been killing me to like be sitting here for a year, like not able to.
I've heard really good things about it. We're actually trying to get her for one of the monthly for this. Like, I want to do that book specifically with Naomi, because I've heard nothing but amazing things about this book.
Yes, it is super, super good.
Wow, that's a great recommendation.
I tried to write a review of it on my blog, and I think I failed utterly. I just ended up writing a review of my own brain, which is the way my reviews usually turn out, which is sort of sad. Let me tell you about my brain. So, but it's like somehow it's got this primeval fairy tale feel. It's this sort of mythical Poland analog, and he goes through, takes all the fairy tale tropes and just punches them in the face.
Cool.
Super.
That's
it's so
awesome.
super.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. You just have to read it. It is awesome.
Are you fans of her other, like, her dragon books?
I do. I have enjoyed those. I have enjoyed those a lot. But this is like on a different level for me.
It sounds
Those,
like
I mean,
it's really.
those are like fun reads for me. This is like my heart, you know. So yeah.
This is like the non-negotiable. Like you got to read this right now. Like beating people over the head with it. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's already been moved pretty high on my list, but I will add it. I will make sure we move it really, really far up. So I'll make sure we do that. Okay, I think we've covered most of our stuff here. I mean, we really dug into the world and the characters, and I mean, I don't know. I mean, these books just, I love how much meat they have. It really, I mean, I'm reading them and I'm savoring them, which I read a lot, and I do enjoy a lot of books, but I felt like these ones had more teeth, more meat. There was just more there to hold on to, and it was a pleasure reading them. So
Thank you. That's something I really do go for, actually, is complexity, you know. And then my favorite books too are the kind of books that you read a second time, you're like, whoa, there's all this stuff I didn't even see, you know.
Or like I did, where you're like halfway through and you're like, oh my god, this book's so good, like you're having the same reaction even though you've already read it. It's not just like, oh, I know, I love it, I'm gonna get lost in the story again. It's like, holy crap, this book's amazing. Right. Like that was how I felt reading these. So oh my gosh, this is so great, Rachel. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for joining us, and I cannot wait to share this interview. And like I said, Lytherus people, I will put the links in this article and below this video in YouTube. There was the interview I did with Rachel with Christopher Paolini back at Comic-Con 2012, and then Chris actually just recently interviewed Rachel, and they talk more about writing and kind of her struggles and process of writing the second book. And I thought it was really interesting because it's different things than we touched on, but considering we interviewed them both before, I thought it would be fun to like link them all together. So I'm going to put that on there too. But yeah, Rachel, is there anything else you want to add or throw in?
Oh, just thank you so much for this opportunity and your enthusiasm. I'm so touched. I really am. So just hearing you talk, you don't know how gratifying it is. Well, maybe you do know at some level how gratifying it is when somebody looks at your art, because you're an artist too, and says that is exactly, you know, that moved me, and I you know, so thank you. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm really glad, and I'm telling you guys, if you haven't read these books or haven't read the second one, get on it. It's wonderful, and I highly recommend it. So, all right, I'm going to go. I will be back next month with our, we have The Girl at Midnight is the May book by Melissa Gray. It's fantastic. Also has dragony characters, has bird people, which if you know anything about me, I love birds. It's fantastic. Oh my God, there's like a peacock dude who's like the snobby. It's fantastic. So check that out too, and I will be back with her later this month with our interview. Okay, bye.
Bye.